Well, awesome. I'm ready to go. I'm hitting record now so I don't forget. We're recording. This is recording. Testing. One, two, 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 three, three, four. What you got, Alan?
Hey, you know what we should bring back? Star Wars trivia. Just a thought.
Oh, we haven't done that in a while.
I'm not
Yeah,
against this. I'm not against this. That's a good check
yeah,
too. That was an excellent check.
yeah.
Sensei K, what you got?
Nothing much. I'm excited because I haven't had a chance to catch up with Brian in a long time, so it's
Yeah.
a great opportunity.
This should be cool. And
Yeah.
let's get a test from our guest here, Mr. Brian. Give us a some kind of test.
Test, 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 test. Hello, this is Brian Takahashi.
I love it.
Can you hear me?
Love it. Yep.
All
Yeah,
right,
it's beautiful.
sounds
Yeah,
good.
it's always informal testing with us, but I like to put it on the show and welcome everyone to yet another episode of the Saber Martial Arts Podcast. Tonight we have a very, very special guest. Of course, you hear that on all kinds of podcasts. But for us on this show, it's kind of unique to get guests that do the types of things that we like to do because let's just face it, there aren't like a whole like army of black belts out there in the world. So tonight we have a really cool somebody who's worked on lots of films and stunt work and I believe done some directing and filmmaking as well, acting and competition martial arts as well, I believe. So tonight we have Brian Takahashi, who we also have Sensei K, of course, who you heard, and Sifu Allen. But Brian Takahashi, you might know most, I guess, recently, or maybe not most recently, but pretty recent and current to the type of clientele we get on this show as young Mr. Miyagi from the Cobra Kai show. So, Brian, welcome, and how are you?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm good. I'm good. Just to correct you, I've never done any sort of competition, martial arts competition, just
Never.
practice.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. Well, judging based off of the inside crescent fake to the side kick that you threw against Daniel-san in that fight scene, you could have probably done okay.
No, that's
So it's going to be that kind of a nerdy conversation tonight.
great.
Brian, tell us a little bit about like what you're currently doing and what your place in this world is, so to speak.
Sure. Currently, well, I guess currently I'm just kind of just letting the rest of the year play out. Got a project that I am working on that is an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement. Can't really get in too much of it, but it is a untitled AAA video game.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, I'll be I'm working on that. Have been working on that. So
So you're doing
that's
motion capture for that, I'm guessing?
yeah, performance capture. So
Okay.
it's a little bit different than motion capture. Like they'll take your face, so you're actually
Yep.
going to see
Yep.
like my face as a character. But yeah, that's been taking up most of my time, other than kind of doing this whole Mr. Miyagi stuff. So, but yeah, it's been fun since the episode aired.
So what was that? What? Because it's the elephant in the room. What got you
Yeah.
to that position, right? So what? How did you end up becoming Miyagi?
Honestly, it's just it's a perfect storm of things, I guess.
Hmm.
So, um, I guess going all the way back, just kind of talking with executive producers and also Ralph Macchio while I
Hmm.
was on
Hmm.
set. They've always wanted to do something with a young Miyagi.
Hmm.
I think if I remember them talking about it, I think all the way back in like season four, they wanted to do something, and then people who are listening or fans don't quote me on it. I'm not quite sure if I remember exactly the season, but I know it was pretty in the middle. They wanted to do something, but they
Hmm.
just never had the opportunity or just didn't feel right. So finally, they were crafting a story from that season on. that they can do something. And then from that point on, they just pretty much sent out an audition. And usually when you get an audition for Cobra Kai, it doesn't say Cobra Kai. It says the arborist. It's a
Uh-huh.
code, yeah.
Right,
It's a
right.
code word. So you're like, okay, but if people don't know, then you're fine. But if you're in the know, you're like, okay, kind of.
Like the
Because if
actors
you
who
look
tried
up
out for Blue Harvest, but it was really Return of the Jedi.
exactly, yeah, and that's the thing, if you look at the executive producers and things like that, it's the same as Cobra Kai. But if
Right,
you're not
right.
really paying attention, you're like, okay.
Hmm.
But this one straight out just came as Cobra Kai, which is kind of odd.
That is interesting.
Um, but it wasn't for young Miyagi. It was a fictitious character,
Okay.
um, a fictitious storyline. Everything was just made up. But if you read the audition, you're like, oh, okay, they're doing Miyagi, but you just don't know to what
Right, right.
capacity. And not knowing the rest of the story, the rest of the episode or the season for that matter, it was just like, oh, I guess they're just going to be doing kind of a callback to
Hmm.
Mr.
Hmm.
Miyagi. Like his characters are, very reminiscent. Even I think in the lines for Daniel, he's like, oh, you remind me of my old, teacher. And it was kind of now in retrospect, looking at the audition, it was kind of similar to um, Daniel's conversation with Mr. Miyagi when he was being trained.
Hmm.
With the first time he realizes he's being trained, where he's saying like, your best karate is inside and things
Right,
like
right.
that. So it was kind of reminiscent of that. And then um, prior to Daniel getting into that scene, this character, I think his name was Yuto, was training his student, and it was very similar to what he was doing with Daniel. So again, if you're a Karate Kid fan, you know about it, you're like, okay, I see what they're doing,
Right,
but
right.
it's not Mr. Miyagi. So did the audition, sent it in, and this was, I want to say it was in March of yeah, it was March of this year.
Okay.
Or was it April? The beginning of the year.
Hmm.
And my wife just reminded me that it was kind of a week before we all caught COVID. This is like the first time we got it. We avoided
Wow,
COVID
you avoided it for like
for,
4 years?
yeah, for a
Oh my
long,
gosh.
long time. Like,
Oh my
her
gosh.
being, yeah, she's a school teacher, and then at the same time I work in the entertainment business. So like, if you got it, that was it. You especially for me, if you got sick, especially with COVID, and you got other people sick, that's like,
Right.
the whole production gets shut down. So we really, really became really careful. But
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
stuff happens. She got sick. She didn't know what it was yet. I didn't feel sick yet, but she was just not feeling well. Did the audition, and then I would say maybe 3 days later, it hit me, and I was like, yeah, I was out for like maybe 2 weeks or so. And usually when you get an audition, they tell you the outside dates. It's when production is going to be shooting to when it ends. You don't know within those dates when you're going, but you kind of have an idea. If you don't hear back from a certain amount of time from the beginning of when they're shooting, you probably didn't get it.
Okay, okay.
And it was getting that close. It was like, okay, I'm not hearing back from them, and then I was hoping and praying that, they would call me back later on so I could just get better. And sure enough, like I think like a week before the start, I get this email from my agent saying, hey, that Cobra Kai thing, you booked it. And I'm like, great. And then they send over the deal, the agreement. And in that agreement, it says this character is for young Miyagi. This is not, Yuto. That was a made up thing.
Okay.
So we're like, oh wow. So that's pretty much it. It was just, I guess, you know,
A good audition, so to
seren
speak.
yeah, serendipitous of like what it is. But I think for the most part, if you didn't, because they had to really stress that this character didn't speak with a Japanese accent. He spoke with a very specific Mr. Miyagi accent. And they're very different. So, that being said, my agent had to reiterate to me saying like, oh, production wanted me to tell you this before, you do it. But I was like, I already sent the audition in, but they're like, this is not like a typical Japanese accent.
Yeah.
It's, more. And I was like, yeah, I got that. And if you don't know what a Mr. Miyagi accent is, then you probably shouldn't be auditioning for this part. All the other interviews I've done, it's like, I think, as far as I know, I mean, maybe Kay, you can correct me, but all the Japanese Americans, Japanese people I know can do like some version of like Mr. Miyagi. I think we've done it one time or another. I'm pretty sure other ethnicities can do the same thing, but it was like, oh yeah, I know exactly what that
Every
is.
Italian's got an Al Pacino impression.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's like, oh, okay, I get it. And yeah, so it was just that, and there was something about this audition, um, that it was like, you know what, I think I got this. I feel like
Interesting.
I got, like, I could do a good job of this. Like I'm not, just some actor. Um, like I knew Pat Morita when I was little. Like we weren't like best friends or anything like that. I just knew him.
Oh, really?
Because my mom, when I was like, probably, so I pretty much grew up in Little Tokyo. I went to preschool down there,
Okay.
elementary school, grade school, all the way up until seventh grade. And my mom and my auntie worked down there, so we knew the people in Little Tokyo, and mostly all the Japanese Americans there. So Pat, and I don't know if you're familiar with another actor named Mako who
Oh, yeah.
passed away, right? So
Oh,
he
yeah.
was the voice of Aku for like
hmm
Samurai Jack and Conan the Barbarian. So I met all
And
these guys.
Avatar, he's Uncle Iroh, the original
Yeah,
Iroh.
exactly. Yep, exactly. So and I must have been, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 or something. But
hmm
I just thought these were like my mom and my auntie's friends. Like I didn't know they were
That's pretty
actors or
cool.
anything like that. And when I finally watched The Karate Kid, and I was like, it kind of reminds me of Pat. I'm like, that is Pat. I'm like, that's not him. He doesn't talk like that. Um, and it's like, well, he's an actor. And I was like, what? And so it was kind of confusing, but I was like, oh, but just kind of knowing that, and then having Mr. Miyagi be such an iconic character for not only just Japanese people, for Japanese American people, I was like, you know what, I feel like I got this. I can at least hopefully got this. And sure enough, I was like, I kind of look like him too. And it's like,
You do
I
kind of
kind of
look like
do.
him.
I kind of look like him.
I was looking at comments on like the YouTube clip because
Hmm.
we had already watched, like, Alan's already seen the episode, and I was watching some
Hmm.
of the stuff last week, but Kay sent us the clip again, and I was reading the YouTube comments, and somebody was like, oh, I didn't realize this was a real person. I thought they did like digital face alteration.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like, well, somebody's got to really be throwing those sidekicks. They didn't like resurrect Miyagi
exactly.
here.
Yeah. So that's the thing, like it was like, oh, and then finally when I got it, I was like, wow. And it didn't really dawn on me. And even when I was there, I had sort of a conflict because of this game I was
hmm
doing.
hmm
I was supposed to fly out to Atlanta for about 2 weeks, and those 2 weeks apparently were for rehearsal for the fight. Getting the stunt cord. Yeah,
Oh.
but I already had a conflict, so I was like, hey, and of course, it's always something like that. And I'm like, God, this sucks if I can't do this because it's conflict. So my agents worked it out, and they're like, okay, we can move up or like make your fly out date later, but it's gonna cut down your choreography time from basically a week and a half to 2 days.
Oh.
Can you do it? And I was
And
like,
you
of course I
choreographed the
can
whole
do
thing
it.
yourself, or did you have
Oh, no,
somebody
no, no,
with
no,
you?
no. I didn't choreograph. No, it
Okay,
didn't have
okay.
stunt coordinator. Yeah,
Okay,
I
okay.
just go out there and learn it.
Yep.
But they're like, can you do it? And I was like, sure, I'm not going to say no. So they're like, okay, flew out, landed. I believe that was um, a Monday. I want to say Monday. Um, and I went immediately. So when you go to the Atlantis where they shoot Cobra Kai, they have a stunt dojo,
Okay.
and it's like a legit dojo. It's a pretty big room. It's all padded up.
Right.
I'm sure if you go online, you could kind of see pictures of it or
Hmm.
videos of it. But
Hmm.
went straight there. I met the stunt coordinator and the other stunt coordinator, Ken and Don, and I was like, "Hey, do you guys have a previs or anything?" They're like, "No, we don't have anything." And I was like, "Nothing." He's like, "Dude, we have so many fights that we're choreographing. We don't have
Yeah,
it.
they
We
don't
like
have
we didn't even
time
know
to
you
do
were supposed
that.
to come today."
Yep.
Yeah, they're like, "You're supposed to be here tomorrow," so we didn't even know. So I was like, "Yeah, okay, that's cool." So I went to my hotel and I just kind of just like chilled and I went over my lines. Next day, they had the fight worked out. I worked with Ralph Macchio's stunt doubles. It was Craig.
Okay.
And I learned it and we just drilled it over and over and over again. So what you see in there, I did all that, but I do have, so Dom does do um, some stunt doubling for me, because especially when he's fighting Ralph. It's just a safer thing for a stunt person to be fighting the lead of the show, and then
So
vice
it
versa.
would actually be Ralph Macchio that he's fighting in this
Exactly. So
moment.
when
So
we
it, not
so
not his stunt double, the actual actor.
no, when I'm fighting him, for the most part, I'm fighting his stunt double.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
There
Gotcha.
are well, we did do scenes where it was Ralph and I doing the fight, but it
Hmm.
was because I have stunt background. I feel like they're a little bit more okay with me doing that as opposed
Right.
to
Right.
someone who doesn't.
Right.
So, but we took it slower, and I'm not throwing the punch as far or fast.
Hmm. Hmm.
The kicks were a little bit more telegraphed because it's Ralph, and Ralph
Sure.
just learned that choreography, I think, that day. So we met up before the shoot and we just ran it, and I that was on Thursday. Um, So Tuesday I was learning it. Wednesday I was able to kind of go over it a little bit at a time with Ralph. I mean, I was sorry, with Ralph's double. Um, and then that's pretty much it because they didn't have any more time. So I just kind of worked it on myself. And then on the day of the shoot, Ralph finally came in and we worked it for a little bit.
So
So sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, do you like working with the actors who don't necessarily have stunt or martial arts experience?
It
I
depends. So
shouldn't.
like if I'm
Maybe I shouldn't ask you that. Maybe you shouldn't.
Oh no, that's right. So if I'm the stunt coordinator, if I'm the person who's actually coordinating and doing it,
Right.
um, I don't mind it too much because then for me it's easier to coordinate something if they don't actually have any sort of like martial arts training. People with martial arts are actually harder because then they have to kind of break whatever martial arts they know,
Right. Right.
especially if they're fighting in a way that's going against what they're supposed to be doing. So, for example, if they're just supposed to be some thug, and then their body goes into like some sort of kata or something or some
Right.
stance,
Right. Right.
just automatically you're like, no, 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 you can't do that. You don't know how to
This
fight. You
character
just
doesn't know how to throw a hook kick.
exactly right. Or like that punch looks a little too clean.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
has to, you
Yeah.
have to dirty it up. Or even sometimes it's happened to me where instinctively you'll just kind of block and then throw a punch and you're not supposed to, then you get clocked. So
Ah. Okay.
yeah, so that kind of stuff. If I'm an actor, um, with another one, it is a little stressful, especially if you're fighting the main character of the
Yeah.
show,
Yeah.
because you don't want to hurt them.
You
You
have to
don't want
take
to,
them with
you
kid
don't want to do
gloves.
exactly, but at the same time, you don't want to like
Insult
do it
them.
so it looks shitty, right? You want to
Yeah. Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
fight. So that's why there's a lot of times where, when Ralph is fighting, um, or when Ralph is facing the camera and then, I'm what they call dirty in the camera, which is I'm
Right.
kind of in front of it. That's usually Dom. Because then then Ralph can throw the punch and, block
Yeah.
and things like that. It's fine. Um, but yeah, we did all that. We ran a couple times, and I was completely bruised up from the Tuesday, Wednesday. Craig did not go easy on me, and I was like, Craig, you don't have to like actually, break my attacks. I'm not hitting you that hard. He's like, no, we have to, we have to do it, man. I was like, okay, it's fine.
And you guys did it
Um,
all bare forearm and everything, because I'm looking at some of those punches and those blocks and stuff. I'm
yeah,
like, man, that feels
all
like
all
old
all bare
Ippon.
forearm. Yeah.
Oh,
I think Ralph in the beginning had pads on, and I was like, I should have gotten pads on just to kind of, just to kind of save my forearms. But
yeah,
like,
because it's a long day
yeah,
of getting your forearms chewed up.
it was 2 days straight of
Yeah.
that, and then like after every day, I would just create an ice bath in my hotel. I literally would get the trash bins in my hotel bin or hotel room and fill up with water. Put it. I had a refrigerator and a freezer, but no ice maker. So
Oh
I would
yeah.
just stick buckets of water in the freezer, and then when I come back, they'd be frozen. I'll just dump them into and just sitting there. And it's like, man, I had like the legs and the arms and everything like that. So, throwing crescent kicks and,
Yeah.
so everything was favored on the left side because Ralph, favors his right.
Oh,
And
okay.
I think also he hurt his left arm in a previous fight, so he couldn't do. So then the choreograph that everything is coming from the left on my side, which is like, tough because I haven't really practiced my left all that much. So I was like, oh
Right.
man, this is
Right.
gonna hurt. So like all the kicks coming from the left is like, oh man, I'm like so like tight right now. I gotta, loosen up. But it was fun.
Is that your spinning
And
back kick in the first combo?
uh
That's a left leg
I
kick. That's
don't
why I
I
asked.
I don't think so. I did do that kick, but I think because it was going towards Ralph in that
Okay.
one,
Okay. That
um,
shot was the
it might be
coordinator.
dumb, but I
Yeah.
did do that. We did do that over and over again.
Uh huh.
But actually no, because when I fought, it was actually his double.
Okay.
So because it's a reverse kick and it's kind of a blind kick.
Right.
They don't want like another actor to be throwing that against like
Right.
the
Right.
lead, But when I did it, it was against his double, and I connected because he's like, when you're fighting against me, you can connect, So I was like, okay, cool. So
Oh.
I did it. So, um, the only thing that I know was um because of the training, and it's just me, it's not really them, but all the practicing going up and doing the fight before a shot, there was like this reverse on the the third pass coming from the right to the left. I was supposed to, it's when Daniel gets a hit off of Miyagi. It's
Yes.
supposed to be kind of a
Yes.
reverse hook kick, and
Yeah.
my leg just could not get high enough for that. I was like, my legs are just gassed. And I was waiting for someone to stretch me out, but I guess he was busy.
That
So I
was a
was like,
close angle too.
yeah. So I was like, Dom, you're gonna have to do this one, man, because like I can't get up that high, and I don't want to end up like hurting, Ralph.
Yeah.
Because again, you're not actually throwing the kick,
Right.
you're throwing it, but then you have to, calculate where that kick is going. So then
Hmm.
when Ralph throws his block, it looks like it's attacking. It's like it's connecting, but it's really not connecting.
Would you say that
So
you almost have to be more practiced, more skilled, more muscle memory, more rehearsed, if you will, in your martial arts if you're working with an actor than if you were
y-
working with the stunt team?
yes, I would say. I mean, honestly, if I didn't have the background that I had, and again, I'm not in like I'm not like Kay or you guys are like that. I practiced for most of my life, but it was just like on and off. And it was many different disciplines. Like I started off
Hmm.
with Shotokan. Actually, no,
Hmm.
I started off with Shorin Kempo. Then I did Shotokan. Then I did a little bit of like, uh, my friend taught me, like some wushu, and I did a little
Hmm.
bit of Wing Chun and things like that. So like it just sort of helped with the stunts. But if
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
have that, this would have been tough. Like I would have been like, yeah, I don't know what's going on, because even though they're basic kicks and punches and things like that, they're all grounded in, I think it's Goju-ryu.
Right. Okay,
kind
you
of
would
thing
know
that they
better
were
than we
using.
would, but that
Yeah,
sounds correct to me.
but that's what they were saying that this is what they're. So I was like, okay. So
Okay.
then, obviously there's some apprehension when I get on set and they're like, can you really fight? Can you really do this? And they're kind of
Yeah.
testing me and kind of doing this stuff. And they're like, okay, yeah, you can do it. Let's just jump into it.
So you hadn't worked
Um,
with those people before?
Never. Yeah, this is
Oh,
like just
okay.
me coming in cold and
They hazed you
you
hard
know,
then, huh?
yeah, I was a new kid on the block. I mean, everybody's been there for like, years, decades, right? And they're like, so I'm coming in. They're like, who's this guy? I don't even think they knew who I was playing. Honestly, they were just like,
Oh,
he's
okay. Okay.
another Asian guy. There were the people who did know knew, but for the most of them, I don't think they knew who I was playing. So,
Okay.
but yeah, definitely to your question, yes, because you need to know distance pretty
Yeah.
much. You just have to know distance. So I know that if I take you know my right foot forward as I punch, I'm gonna connect and hit the person.
Right.
But if I don't do that, or if I just take a half a step, I can throw that punch at full speed,
Hmm.
but it's gonna stop like inches away from their face, and it's gonna look good, as opposed to someone who can't, know that distance and just kind of lean into it
Right.
and then maybe connect, right? So, especially with the kicks, I think the kicks,
Like high
so the
kicks to the
feint,
head
yeah,
too,
the high
right?
kicks, yeah, the feint kick that Miyagi does to Daniel, that was all me. Like they were like, that looks great, go do
It's a
that.
slick kick.
Yeah, so and then that when so what they used is me, and you could kind of tell if stacking when they shoot it, where I did the kick and it was I think like maybe 3 or 2 inches away from Ralph, and then Ralph just kind of takes it and falls back.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but we did multiple takes of it when I was fighting Craig. I connected. I mean, I'm not
Right.
not full force, but I did connect with that one, and he falls back, and then he just lays on the ground, and then like Ralph would come in and take his place, and
Hmm.
then he would get up, and then Ralph's like, no, actually, let me do this one. I can
Oh,
do this one.
interesting.
So he's like, and then they're like, okay, hey man, Ralph really wants to do this one, so don't hit him. And I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna hit him. Don't worry.
And
I'm not
Ralph's in his 60s, isn't he?
Yeah,
Wow.
he's in his 60s, so like he's still fit, man. He's still
I gotta
sparring.
say, man, props to the guy because it's pretty clear he's not really kept up with, let's say, martial arts training since he
Yeah,
was the
yeah,
Karate
yeah.
Kid, right? But
Yeah.
still, like nobody I know in their 60s is trying that stuff for basically the first time. So
Exactly. And again, he's been fighting, like, again, he's coming off of an injury coming into the scene too.
mhm, mhm.
So yeah,
He's
big
been
props to
active.
everybody. Yeah, everybody on that set, all the legacy characters,
Mhm.
like just big props to them, because they're all of them are doing it. Even though
Yeah.
they have stunt doubles and stuff like that, they're still there. They're not just like, okay, have the guy do it, I'm just gonna sit there. Like, no, they're up on their feet, they're throwing
Yeah.
kicks, they're punching, they're doing all that stuff.
We talk about that
Um,
with the Star Wars characters a lot.
mhm.
Alan and
Yep.
I had a chat last week about like fight choreography, and of course we're not as involved in it professionally as you are, obviously, but like coming at it from sword fighting perspective, like as an audience member or as a martial artist who, you have to teach choreography and kata sometimes to teach concepts
Yeah.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But like we're very impressed with like some of the way like Ewan McGregor or Hayden Christensen sort of
Mhm.
dove right into all that stuff
Oh,
and
yeah.
insisted
Yeah.
that they be the ones to do stuff. But then you have like Christopher Lee, who was in his 80s,
Yeah.
also insisting that he get a chance to swing a sword
Yeah.
around.
Well,
So
he's an accomplished sword fighter.
yes, that's true.
So, yeah.
So for you, let me ask you this little addendum. If you, I didn't mean to cut you off or anything, but
No,
I
go
do
ahead.
that sometimes. I'm a Philly boy, so I do that sometimes.
No.
Who are some of the actors who you've worked with that really just got what was going on?
Oh man. So I haven't really choreographed or even like fought a lot of like name actors, I would say. For the most part, my stunt career is usually the guy who gets beat up.
That's
But
cool too.
yeah, I mean, stunt guys, that's kind of your job. You go in there and you make the lead or the actor look good. You come in, you take your hit, and then you get down, and you do it so you don't get hurt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was it. So like being in, I would say, I mean, from my perspective, from like now, it's Ralph. Like Ralph
Yeah,
really gets it.
he
Like
gets
he
it.
really understands. I mean, like it or not, he is a Karate Kid, and
Right, right.
it's been the big part of his life. So he understands that, like, he was the one that was basically calling the shots on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Even though there was a director and writer and stuff like that, he's an executive producer, so he would be the one who's like, no, no, cut, cut, cut. He's like, no, 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 that felt like crap. Let's do it again. And it's him. He's like, no, that punch, I didn't throw that punch far. I didn't take that hit well. Let's do it again. Let's do it again.
Interesting.
So and it's just like, oh great, this guy actually knows, because in my head, yeah, there was a couple times where I was like, oh, that could have looked better, just, but I'm like, it looked fine. But then right away before that I could finish that thought, Ralph's like, no, cut, let's do that again.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, wow, that's really cool. Other
That
than
is
that,
cool.
there's a handful of like actors.
Or even
I would say
even
for
maybe
the sorry, go
projects
ahead.
that you worked on that we were like, wow, this project like feels right. Everything about this feels
Oh
good.
yeah. Trying to think of. I mean, for the most part, I would say um, everybody who's gonna put money to stunts and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they do it right. That regardless if it is emulating some sort of martial arts, or
Car crash or a
yeah, or I would do all stunts with car crash and stuff like is way different. That involves like special effects
sure,
and
sure.
practical stuff like that. But I'm just talking about like strictly just like fighting
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and all that stuff like that. Everybody takes that pretty seriously. I would say, and from my experience, I've only been, man, I think the only time I was like, well, this is kind of dangerous was on the set of Letters from Iwo Jima. And it was like uh, a Clint Eastwood film,
Yeah.
and I wasn't even a stunt person at the time, but I just kind of knew
Just
what
like
I
an
was
extra
doing.
or
No, it was kind of an odd situation. I kind of tell this story to people getting into the industry, but
go for it, because
so
you might have some
going,
people listening who are thinking
oh
about it.
great. So I mean, going in, I must have been, man, probably my early 20s. And initially, yeah, it was just kind of a going in for some background because I needed Japanese men to be soldiers.
Okay. Yep.
But when we got there, so this was when it was still Sandy and Lisa casting. I think it's different. That's like Alicia Hart casting now, but that was like the big uh, background extras casting that you would go to. And then I had friends who were going to go to it. They're like, "Hey, Brian, let's go." And I was like, "That's fine." And they're like, "Come on, it'll be fun." And I was like, "Okay, fine." Went
Famous
and
last words.
yeah, right. The first thing that they asked you when you go in was, "Can you speak Japanese?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay, can you go stand on that side?" I was like, "Okay." So, a couple of us who could speak Japanese, I made us stand in a different line. This person came out. I forget if he was a guy or a girl. And they just sort of tested you. They just started talking to you in Japanese and, respond back. And then they kind of like give you the thumbs up. And they sent you over to the main casting person. They're like, oh, what we want to do is we want to cast you, but not as background. It's going to be like a special group. It was like the dumbest name. We were called the cross dressers, and it was like, we were like, okay, like what are we doing? So they're like, no, 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 this is just a name. So what they did was they wanted to have a core group of um, actors, background art, whatever you want to call them. And because this was a all Japanese cast, principal cast, they wanted to have these guys in the scenes with the principal actors. And if they were to turn and ad lib something in Japanese, they wanted people to be able to respond back. But at the same time,
Ah,
yeah,
okay.
they wanted them to speak English because the production only spoke English, so they were like, "What did he say?" or something.
Oh,
So I
that is
think,
very
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. So they, when we got cast and we got on set, they pretty much fit us for everything that you could think of. So we were like naval units, army, pilots, tankers, I think we were like mechanics, everything. We had all sorts of costumes. And what we were supposed to do was when there was a close up of the principal actor, we would be in there and they would be like, okay, what's his costume? Okay, go in your costume. So every day we would go in and we'd get a note and be like, okay, today you're putting this on. Okay. And we did that for like the longest time. But during and so when we were, because we were there and they're like, hey, well, we need extras anyway. So like, you guys can also be background, but you cannot be close to the camera. You got to be as far away from the camera as possible because if you see your face, like that's it. Like we have to send you home because that's kind of like spoiler. So that's kind of was the thing. Like when you were actually shown, and most of the time the guys who were shown, they had like a line or something like that, like they and then they get killed off, and then you'll go home. So
Got
you
it.
literally died,
Okay.
and then you would just disappear. And so the scene was it was like if you watch the movie, it's like when this plane comes and starts shooting up the Japanese cap, and it's like I think it's like this little like valley, and they had me and this other they paired me up with this other extra, and we were in like this tanker uniform, and we are like really really far away from the camera and the action, but what we were close to were all these air mortars. They're basically just giant mortars that just blow up. And they must have done a dry run of it because they blew up all the mortars.
So
And then
I'm sorry, for anybody listening, this would be like mortars, but like blanks, if you will.
it would be like a compressed air mortar.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Okay.
and then what they would fill it up with is like, cork powder or dust and things like that. And then it would
Gotcha.
blow up. It just like, right.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and then they would usually put like a tent or something over so it looked like it blew up.
Okay.
So we were like, okay, cool. And so the military consultant, I think that was the military consultant, for some reason, the military consultant was becoming kind of like an AD or a PA and positioning extras in places. Like they
Hmm.
shouldn't do that. That's not their
Hmm.
job. So they put us in this place, and they're like, okay, I want you to run down this path. And I was like, no, that's not a good idea. Yeah, and I guess this is in the like literally like right the next, I would say, roll over. We were supposed to run down this row of tents, and the next one over was actually where the stunts were, and they had stunt guys and they had squibs in the ground. And what squibs are basically little explosions that will go off, and then it looks like gunfire, and then they'll
Yep.
hit and they'll fall down. Um, and I was like, that's probably not smart because there's a lot of stuff, and he was not the best guy. He made it seem like we were still in the army or we were in the army. He's like, you don't question there, and we're like, okay, fine, whatever. And I was looking at the path, and I was like, well, the air mortars are already gone off, so I guess we should be fine. There shouldn't be a problem. Obviously, the extra next to me, I think his name was Ben. He was like, "What's going on?" I was like, "That's fine. I think we should be fine. We'll just stick to the path, and when to say action, just run down." And he's like, "Okay." So just to kind of give it a description of what we're wearing a jumpsuit, kind of like a cotton jumpsuit,
Okay.
padded. We had a silk scarf. Everyone was issued a silk scarf around their neck. We had kind of like a cloth helmet with goggles. So you really
Mm-hmm.
couldn't see. They were just kind of there, and they were placed on our head, kind of like a steampunky kind of thing. And we're like, okay, that's our uniform. We're away from the camera, and we hear, all right, ready, set, action. And as we're about to run, instead of the air mortars, they're actually now fire mortars,
Oh.
and they were just blowing, like everything started blowing up, like literally blowing up.
Oh man.
And I was like, what the hell is going on? So I'm running, and then all of a sudden now you have cork dust and smoke and everything flying. We couldn't see anything. And then I just kind of feel like this body kind of hit me and fall to the ground. And it was, it was the extra. And he's like kind of rolling on the ground. I don't think he knew what he was doing. And he was like rolling into like a fire pit. Like it was basically, so I had to grab him. They got him up. I put the goggles on, and I'm like running, and then you can't see anything. It's just basically a plume of brown and black. And I have him with my hand, my left hand around him, and as I'm like reaching him to pull him up, I see that my hand is like covered in something, and it was covered with like a flaming tarp. And I was like, oh
Oh,
crap! So I ripped that off, and I'm running down. He's like, what's going on? I was like, just keep running. Just keep. So I'm like kind of driving him down the hill, and I get to the bottom of the hill, and one of the ADs, the second AD, they're just waiting there in the cut, and he is pissed. He's
oh
so pissed.
no.
He's like, what the hell are you guys doing? What are you doing? And I was like, and I forgot what his name was. Oh my God! But we were all pretty close, like the whole group, and then and him. We'll just call him. We'll call him Adam. I don't think that was his name, but like, I'm like, Adam, I told the military consultant guy this was a bad idea, and he goes, wait, what did you say? And I was like, the military consultant told us to run. I told him he's like, just wait here, wait here. And he goes, I'm probably getting this military consultant in trouble, but whatever. It's been
It's
over a
been like
decade,
15
so
years, hasn't it?
yeah. So he
Probably
comes over,
more.
he brings over one of the producers, and he goes, can you just tell him what you told me? And I repeated, he goes, okay. He's like, I'm so sorry that happened. Are you guys okay? And I'm like,
I was only on
yeah, for
fire,
the
but
most. Yeah, I was on time, and then poor Ben was like, oh, I'm like, oh, I'm okay, So that was done. Apparently, there has been a lot of complaints about this military consultant guy, so that was like the last straw.
uh,
I go back to so apparently on that day there were a lot of people who got hurt, and that were extras, just because they were put in places that they shouldn't be.
that's
One got
that's
hit by
unfortunate.
like a big concussive blast, and he got knocked back, and all sorts of crazy stuff. Apparently, the scarf that I had caught on fire. I didn't know that because it was like wrapped around my neck, but it
I
caught
was
on
thinking about
fire.
that. You were wearing cotton and silk
Yeah,
in a
so
war zone. Like,
yeah, so all the Japanese, 'cause we were the Japanese, army,
right.
Imperial Army. They all had these like silk scarves, and it was part of their,
The uniform, yeah.
uniform. And it literally just burned a hole. And then my couple of my friends were like, "What the hell happened to your head?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And I kind of reached back, and I just kind of brushed
Oh
like
no.
my back of my head, and all this hair just like singes off.
Oh
So like,
no.
and then I take the scarf off, and you could see that there was about like a golf ball size hole where the flame was, and it kept burning down until finally it was just like a brown mark, but it was like one layer away from my neck.
Oh
Um,
man.
I have the scarf somewhere. I gotta find it, but like I was like, oh, I'm gonna keep it. But that's probably the only time really that it was like that bad. I mean, I've been hit before and
Yeah.
stuff like that, but that's fine. But this was like the only time where I was like, man, this one could have been bad.
That's a
Like,
legitimate horror
if
story for sure.
yeah, like if I didn't kind of have the foresight to be like, okay, this can already go a bit sideways and be a little bit on guard. If I was just like, okay, let's go, I probably would have been hit by that mortar
Yeah.
blast and gotten into worse shape. But the funny thing was, that the day we wrapped, um, we had, I think there was like five people that got hurt, or people got their ankle sprained, all sorts of things. We were tired, covered in like crap, and we're literally the scene, that we're in, or it's a destroyed military, like I guess camp, so that all
Hmm.
the stuff that was once there was all gone. So the production's like, guys, before you guys go up, go back to your hotel. We want to tell you something. Can you guys hang back? And we're just like, what is this? They corral us into this little like burned out, bombed out cabin. No roof, just like barely in four walls. And a production goes, "We just want to give you guys have been working so hard. We just want to give you a round of applause." And they start clapping for us.
Oh, jeez.
And I kid you not, all of us, we just kind of looked at them. We looked at each other. We just all walked away. And even as they're still clapping, we just all walked away. And people are limping. It looked like a war zone. People
Oh,
just looked
man.
wrecked. So I was like, oh my God. Next day,
They brought you to a
we had
room to clap for you. I've never heard of that nonsense before.
And we had a SAG rep come out and like take all our claims and things like that. So it was like, I was like, wow. And I wasn't even hired to be a stunt guy on that day, but that was probably like the worst like stunt experience I ever had. So, yeah, but like I said, for the most part, everyone who's doing it is really safe, especially now these days, especially with like what happened with Rust, with the armory. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah.
So everything is like super safe. Me coming up in that, everybody that I've worked with have been really safe, like super safe.
Yeah.
I should say Jason Statham is pretty good with that too. Like he's
is he a trained martial artist? I've never really been clear on that.
I don't know if I'm pretty sure he's done something, but he's a
very athletic.
I think he's like an Olympic diver or something. So
that sounds right. Yeah,
he's like, he's legit. Like when I was on this movie called Crank.
Yeah, man. That's classic.
So we were hanging out. It was me and like the other stunt guys, and we're just kind of hanging out. So we're supposed to look like we're filming at the Standard, which is we're not. We're in a building next to the Standard. It was like this. I think it was like a office building that was being remodeled. But so we're hanging out on one of the floors that has literally nothing in it. It's just exposed concrete, exposed rebar in the ceiling, everything. And we're just kind of hanging out there, and it's one floor lower than the actual set. And to pass the time, we're hanging out with stunt guys. We were just doing stuff, physical, challenges, and there were these rebars on the ceiling, and we're running up and we're like smacking him and trying to touch it.
Mm-hmm.
And here comes Jason Statham. He goes, "Hey guys, what are you doing? What are you guys doing?" And we're like, "Oh, we're just trying to like hit that rebar." And I would say the rebar was probably maybe as high as like a basketball.
Sure.
Like 12 feet off the
ground.
Yep. And the majority of us could kind of reach it, but some of us couldn't. And there was a really tall guy. I mean, he's he's like a legendary stunt guy. His name was Iram Choi.
Okay.
He actually doubled for Andrew Garfield in Spider-Man 2.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, the Asian Spider-Man. So he was the only one who could really kind of get that, right? He was like smacking it. So here comes Jay. And then Jason Statham isn't like super tall. I would say he's like maybe like 5'7".
Yeah.
But he's like, "What are you guys doing?" And we're like, "Oh, trying to hit that bar." He's like, that one. And we're like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, you guys can get that." I'm like, "No, that's hard, man." He goes, "That one," and he keeps pointing at it, and without even running, he just goes, "I'll show you," and he just squats down, jumps straight up, vertical.
Oh no, serious?
Yeah, and just lands. He's like that.
Oh.
Yeah, like that. He goes, "Oh, you guys can do it." He goes, "That was fun, guys. I'll see you on set." And he walks away.
Damn. A guy as handsome as Jason Statham does not need any more cool points.
Yeah, no, he was really, really cool. Like he would come over and hang out with us and everything. And just, he made that movie. Like he was, when I got cast, it was kind of weird casting. We were brought to set, and then we were just there were like about maybe 8 of us, and the producers and directors came out, and they just said, we want you guys to be, show us your best gangster, and we want you to shoot us, like you don't like us. I'm like, okay. So, we were shooting, and I guess, me and this other guy, we were the best one. So, we got cast that day, and here comes Jason. in a hospital gown. And if you remember the movie, he's wearing a hospital gown on a
Yeah.
motorcycle. And apparently they just shot that. And he comes out. He's like, "Oh, welcome. My name's Jason." And he's like shaking her hands. And he turns away, and he's like completely like there's nothing there. I think he was wearing like some like colored like nude shorts on. But,
Right.
like it looked like he wasn't. I was like, oh, this. I'm like, what the hell kind of movie is? But yeah, that was a fun time. Yeah, he kind of comes into to my ideas. Like he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And it's watching all the other action stuff that he's done. It clearly shows that he knows what he's doing.
He's a staple in the action movie biz.
Yeah,
for good
yeah,
reason.
yeah.
For good reason. Everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know really anybody who doesn't like when Jason Statham shows up in a movie. So
Exactly. Yeah.
all right, Alan and Kay, what do you guys have? Because I'm sitting here drooling with this conversation going on. Alan, I know you've been watching one of Brian's more recent projects. If you wanna bring that one up, I know you've done some motion capture for what is it, Blue Eyed Samurai?
Oh, I did voices for
Voices.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was that like for you?
That was cool. Like that. So when I actually booked that one, that was it took a long time for Blue Eye Samurai to come out. I think when I first auditioned and booked it, that was back in 2018.
Wow.
Yeah, 2008, 2009. It took a long time.
That's a
for it to
relatively
come
new
out.
release too, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Just within the last couple
But
months, I think.
yeah, so that's why I was like, oh man, I was like, is this even gonna come out? But but it's animation, so it
Yeah.
takes a long time. But yeah, that was fun. It was before COVID, so went to studio, kind of did my thing, and
Yeah, I
I
didn't even
played
think about
two
that.
different characters, but they're not that big, so it was but easy just to kind of do it. Um, so, but those were kind of like the one and done kind of things. You kind of go in, you do your stuff, and then you're like, okay.
Did you
and then
enjoy doing the voice though? It seems like a fun way to
Yeah,
do
I mean,
acting.
it is. I mean, it's kind of tough because they didn't have the character. It was just lines because they didn't have anything was drawn yet. Nobody, it was just like, okay, this is what we want.
Hmm.
And one of them was supposed to be a drunk guy, but the character was really drunk. Like his name was really drunk, and it was like the secondary character there. Just like, oh, we want you to do this one too. But doing drunk stuff is tough, especially if
Yes.
you're just doing your voice, because you can really, show drunkenness with your physicality, but in your voice, and then they didn't want like stereotypical like slurring and things
Right,
like that. So I was
right.
like, that one's a little challenging to do.
You had to be a high
Really,
functioning drunk.
yeah, I mean, I guess so, because I'm like, well, if he's really that drunk, he wouldn't be saying anything.
Right,
He'd
right.
just be like, But other than that, that was a cool. I mean, going off the lines, I was like, man, what kind of shit was this, dude? It's always a mystery when you go in there, because if you don't know what it is, you're like, okay, and then you finally see the end product, and you're like, oh, that's what that was. Okay,
So
it's like once. Go ahead.
Oh no, I don't know. Finish.
Oh no, it was just because if you ever watch I think on the third episode, second or third, it's the scene where everyone's like taking their clothes off and then jumping into like a lake. So my
Okay.
line was yeah, it's time to get nude or something like that. Be reborn, and I was like, what is this? And they're saying, oh, this is a very adult cartoon, and I was like, what is this? Like, okay, cool. I never heard of it before. So
So
you have to have faith that what you're doing is not going to be weird, but
well, my
yeah.
question stems off of that is, were you reading Japanese or English dub or both?
Oh, no, Blue Eye Summer was all in English.
Okay,
It was
so
all in, they didn't have any Japanese.
was
Yeah,
it
so.
translated from an original Japanese script?
No, this was a complete. No, it's a completely original IP.
So very
So it was,
interesting
yeah,
that the grammar would be that way, like in
yeah,
the word choice, because you can
exactly.
understand if it had been translated from Japanese, like how some of
Yeah.
the idioms would be different, but
Hmm.
that's quirky.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a quirky show. I mean, if you take out all like the nudity and the gore and stuff like that, if you just kind of look at it, you're like, yeah, that's kind of a quirky
I
show. I mean, they
just
have,
started watching the first episode, so
yeah.
I'll have to keep watching.
I mean, they have a guy, like they have the guy with like no hands.
Hmm.
That actually that was the a role that I initially auditioned for.
Oh, interesting.
Um, and but then I went to Masioka, so I was like, okay, well they're giving it to Masi, that's right. So I could see Masi playing that. Because I kept getting the note like, can you make your voice sound heavier? Because it's a big guy, and I was like, heavier? I was like, sure, yeah. But then at the end product, I was like, Masi doesn't sound heavy, but I'm like, it's probably because it's Masi. So I was like, okay, I get it.
That'd be a good parlor trick to like guess somebody's weight based on their voice.
Exactly, back to their voice, right?
You must weigh about 165 pounds.
Yeah, it's like 145 and a half.
Oh
So
man. So how do totally kind of out of left field? How do you and Kay actually know each other to the point to where now you're here chatting with us?
I'll let Kay answer that if you want, Kay.
Sorry, man. I'm over here geeking out because
I'm
like
telling you, it's a
I
great.
had to I had to put myself on mute because it's like it's just awesome to hear Brian.
I know. I'm
You
trying to let him
know,
talk. At the same time, I'm trying to like somewhat be a host, but like, shut up, Fo. Just let him talk.
yeah, no, it's awesome. I know Brian from way back, and we grew up in the same community center.
Okay.
Mom's from the same, from the same region where my family's from in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So it we like we were just constantly, like on weekends and stuff, like especially if there's events, like Buddhist temple, like just the Japanese school stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
just you know it's like we'd always be bumping into each other, right? And it's like he was just just a chill guy growing up. Brian, sorry if I embarrass you,
No, go ahead.
it's just you know the thing is, it's like I said this in one of my Facebook posts just a little while ago, but man, I feel like I'm one of the luckiest martial arts that are out there right now because you know people that I know, a lot of people that they're going out and they're doing their thing, right? And you realize you just kind of blink and you realize, wow, man, they're doing what they want to do and they're enjoying life.
Mm-hmm.
You realize how small the world is, because going back, like Brian and I were kind of like in the same circles growing up, but he knows like Bill Ford, right, who's one of Tan Nguyen Sensei, who's he's the main protege for Demura Sensei, right? He took over
Okay.
Demura
Yep.
organization, and it's funny because I'm watching, and it's the night I was watching the Cobra Kai season 6, I'm like, wait, he looks familiar, and then I see, in a few episodes later, I see Brian, and I'm like, holy cow,
You didn't
right?
even realize that he was in it
I didn't,
beforehand.
yeah. And so because and, when I texted him, he's like, "Yeah, NDA, man. Sorry, I couldn't say anything."
Yeah.
So, you know, but no, it's just so cool that to see people that you grow up that you grew up with
Yeah.
enjoying what they're doing. And Brian's been working at this for a long time, and we've even in the separate ways we've crossed paths. I mean, we crossed paths at Combat Con too, right, in Vegas.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah, yeah, a
So
long time ago. Yeah.
yeah. It's so like even then like he was with his crew and they came at the Combat Con in Vegas while I was there with TSL.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right? And it's like I'm like, wait, Brian, what are you doing here, right?
Yeah.
What are you doing here?
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's just like I said, I'm geeking out because I'm catching up on all on all what he's been doing and
Yep.
So yeah, sorry, man. It's just I've been quiet because it's just I'm enjoying the conversation. So.
It's very interesting stuff that you're telling because we've talked to some people, like Yamasaki Sensei and Sakura, who like they're living, breathing martial arts like all the time, and you're also doing that, but like the other elements of it too, like just straight up acting. That's like that's its own I don't want to say martial art, but it is art, obviously. So
Yeah.
It's another path, man.
yeah, I mean, you're really like doing the Musashi thing in a way by having your avenues of artistry that you work on. So, what are some other like art type things that you're into?
So I mean, I guess because it's if you know, I started this acting career back in 2000. So been at this for about 24 years now. Going into it, there's not a lot of parts for Asians, and then more specifically Japanese Americans. That we kind of had our heyday in the 80s with like the Karate Kid and Gung Ho and things like that. But even at that time, they were predominantly stereotypes.
Sure.
And then going into from 2000s on, it was just like whatever. So those stereotypes, were still very prevalent in the roles that came out. So you have to be proficient in your craft in every part of it. And I remember not to like name drop, but like Tamlin Tomita, who's in the Karate Kid 2, she's great. She is a big part of the Japanese American community. She helps out with a Japanese American festival that we have annually called Nisei Week.
Yep.
But also she's been a really good guiding light for me too. Like certain times where my career, I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. So she's really the one who planted the seed. Like, hey, you have to not just be an actor. You have to really kind of do your own stuff. You have to create the opportunities. And I remember having dinner, actually, it was lunch with her one time, and that's basically what she said. She's like, yeah, it's easier now. You're not saying that it's easy, but it's easier now for people to do that. You have so much at disposal, so why not? So I was like, yeah, why not? So got into directing, producing, writing, and within just that, that entertainment industry was able to corral a bunch of like-minded artists, produce some things. And this is just to kind of keep us busy. There's one web series that I'm pretty proud of. It was just the brainchild of several of us. And the premise was, why don't we produce something that we can just put onto our, portfolio or reels, whatever you want to call it, to show like, this is what we can do.
Sure.
And, I brought on people who wanted to do what they want to do in the industry, right? So, for example, there was my director of photography, cinematographer. His name is John Takanaka. We call him Big John. I think he works pretty regularly in the industry, but eventually he wants to be like the DP, like the person in charge. And I think at the time he was like assistant to like the second DP, or basically he was like the on the ground level going up. So I gave him the opportunity, like, hey, if you want to be the DP for this, go for it, and really I couldn't have done it without him. He brought so much equipment, just pure equipment to the shoots, that I was like, wow, this is crazy. He brought lights, he brought the camera, he brought the crew. It was great. And then I had stunt guys who wanted to be actors, so they gave them acting things, or actors who wanted to be stunt guys, so gave them stunt roles. But the most important thing about that, so the main character, it was an actor named Kurt Kuniyoshi. And just the story in a nutshell, it was kind of my take on, oh god, I'm blanking on the movie. It's with Natalie Portman's first movie with Jean Rene. What is that movie?
Jean Reno.
Oh,
yeah.
The Professional?
The Professional.
The Professional, yeah. So it's kind of my
Or
take on
Leon.
Leon, yes.
Alan coming out of nowhere with the save there. Oh, man.
Of that.
You want stupid trivia? I mean, I'm
No,
game.
no, that's not stupid. I like that game clutch
That
right
was
there.
such clutch
Uh,
timing, Alan.
yeah, this
Awesome.
was back in 2015 that we kind of, created this. I wrote it and produced it and had everybody else bring in their talent. But I wanted a older Japanese American to play kind of like a Walter White type character, also with like a Leon type role. So it's your typical surrogate father, surrogate daughter kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
story, but I've never seen like an elderly character do like fighting and stuff like that. And he was supposed to be kind of like in his late 60s and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. Kurt was not that, but I was like, Kurt, I think you could play this. And he goes, oh, I don't know. He's like, I don't really do this kind of stuff. I was like, no, I think you'd be perfect. Kurt, he was at the time was doing the musicals and things like that. Very happy stuff. He goes, oh, man, it's just kind of dark, and I was like, you could do it, you could do it. Um, and he did a great job. Unfortunately, this past year he passed away due to cancer.
Mm.
But I remember spending time with him, and he was saying, he's like, I'm so glad you talked me into doing this role, because it was like the most fun I've ever had as
That's
an
very
actor.
cool.
Yeah, so I'm just like, yeah, man,
What is this series
it,
called?
it's called Hit. It's on my YouTube thing.
Okay.
Um,
I'm gonna try
but
and
it
link that in
yeah,
the
check it
show
out.
description.
It's only 4 episodes. We had a fifth one, but I just never got along to like getting edited. We had an editor, but then life happens, and then just everything kind of goes up. So one of these days, I'll go back around and try to edit that. But that is a beast of an episode. But he did great,
Yeah.
and really was, like I said, at the end of the day, it was just something that people can take and put it on the reel and say, hey,
Yeah.
the way it was shot, it looks very professional, even though we had no budget, literally nothing. I went around and begged and pleaded to use people's places for locations and things like
Yup.
that, and it took maybe 5 years. So every episode took a year because it was just trying to get everybody
Wow.
together, because we all did it on our spare time.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, it was a big ordeal. Kind of to think of it, I was like, man, So
You're
one
like
of these
Peter
days,
Jackson over here.
yeah, one of these days, if I, when I come into great someone, I'm gonna reach out to every single one of those people who were part of that, and this podcast could be proven. I'm just gonna be like, here's your check.
Oh
Here's your check
yeah,
for
there
those
you
people, what
go.
you did. Kind of pay
Well,
that
thank
off.
you
But
from us and our listener, because now we got something we can all check out, and I'll try and
there you
link that
go. Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
please do.
Thanks for telling us about that, because like um in the type of roles that you have, especially the stunt roles, like
Hmm.
people aren't really supposed to know you're there, right? Like if you're doing your job right, it's
Correct.
whoever the
Yeah.
star is.
Yep.
So it's kind of cool to hear like that you're doing stuff where you are like either in the spotlight or the main driving force behind the project. Or it's cool to see like these nameless people that they're actually like a big part of this whole big
Oh yeah.
industry
Yeah,
that we
yeah.
love. All these tales
Exactly.
and stories that capture our imaginations. It's like
Yeah.
real people like you are the ones making them. So
Exactly. And then Tomlin was right. It's like, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have learned so much about
mhm.
just the industry, right? Like, so yeah, I really do believe that you have to really put whatever you're seeking out there. Like if
Mhm.
you just keep it to yourself, then it's all fine and dandy, but it doesn't have the opportunity to get made or grow, or even exist if it just stays in your head.
Yeah.
So I always try to push people if they're have an inkling to do something. It's like, yeah, just do it. Like I have this writing group that I kind of started, and it was inspiration for another writing group that I'm part of, put together by a guy named Jason Fong, great guy. He's been doing this writing meetup. So if anyone wants to do this writing meetup, like It's all online. His name is Jason Fung.
Huh.
It's all free, but it is donation based. But he's been doing this for, I want to say 30 years now or 20 years, something crazy like that. I don't know if I have, but
Huh.
a long, long time. It started off with just him and his friends just kind of writing. They would meet together and write, and then it just grew. So he has, I think he does it twice a year, and he has like 6 or 7 groups.
Wow.
And yeah, it's crazy how he can organize all this. But I took that inspiration. I was like, oh, I'm gonna try to just,
Mm-hmm.
start my own, trying to, keep going. And I'm really kind of getting people who just say, I always wanted to write. I just
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
don't think I'm a writer. I was like, no, like if you have an imagination, you can write and you can do it. You can just start.
I love that.
So, that kind of stuff. It's just really from that experience of like doing it yourself. It's like, it's never too late to kind of start. I even teach for free, kind of like a fighting for film class for people who just don't have any
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
Um, that all started because my agency, it was back in, I think it was the start of 2023. We kind of have this yearly wrap up online, and the agent will just like list these shows that are coming out, supposed to be allegedly coming out that year. And a lot of them had roles that require some sort of fight experience.
Right.
And I noticed as like the chat and everybody were talking, they're like, "Oh, I don't have that. I don't have that. I don't have that." So I was like, "Well, I
Oh,
mean, if you guys want, I can just teach you like the bare basics of what it is
right. Right.
to fight for film." And as a stunt coordinator, it helps if like we talked earlier, if the actor has something, because like um, for the reality is, if you ever get into stunts like that, most of the time, unless you have a really big budget, the stunts, we get like maybe a couple hours,
Minimal.
maybe
Right.
an hour before the
Yeah.
shoot to kind of come up with something with the actor, right? So if the actor comes in already knowing something, it's like, oh, cool, you know how to do that. Okay, let's make your fight a little bit cooler then, instead of just
Mm-hmm.
sticking with the
Mm-hmm.
basics so we can, because we got to get this done. So that's kind of where this class comes in. A lot of the people who I teach now are all actors, but just trying to get into it. People who you would never think would be able to fight, which is great because that's kind of the whole appeal to it. If you don't look like you can do it, or then you can start doing it. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, that's cool. And I preface it by saying, look, this what I'm teaching you guys will not help you in a fight. This is not going to save your life. This is the exact opposite of that because I'm
Right.
teaching you how not to actually hit someone and not to. Um, so, but it helps. I haven't been able to do it on a regular basis because it's just like again trying to juggle everyone's
Right.
schedule and
Right.
things like that. But I just kind of give them a little bit of like. So what I do is like so haymaker is like the easiest thing that anybody can throw, right? It's
Right.
like it's very telegraphy, it's in everything. So I just show them kind of a safer alternative to that, and I learned that from another stunt coordinator named Steve Huff, who's also great guy. Big shout out to Steve.
Yeah,
Um,
he is a
he's
good guy.
yeah, you probably met Steve right at
Yeah,
Comic Con and stuff like that. Great guy, knows his stuff. He studied what did he study? I think he studied some type of kung fu, but then most of the time he studied like the European style martial arts, like the
Okay.
Hina and stuff like
Yep.
that.
Yep.
But yeah, really knows his stuff. But it's like, I'm taking what he taught me, and I was like, that's a really good principle to do, and then like showing other people like this is how you do it, in a
Mm-hmm.
safe way. So yeah, like if anybody is like thinking about doing it, it's never too late. Especially if you want to get into like entertainment. Like, it's so easy now. You have a cell phone, you got YouTube, you could just kind of just start doing
Mm-hmm.
your own thing. One of my favorite stories is there's an actor named Ken Takemoto.
Mm-hmm.
He's an older gentleman. You probably, if you, I mean, he's been in some commercials. He always plays like a grandpa, but
Mm-hmm.
I think he's been in a lot of things. But the one thing that sticks out to me is there's a movie called The Island, It had
Oh,
Ewan McGregor, right?
yeah,
If you
yeah.
remember that one. And
That's
yeah, and then
that came out like in like 2002 or 3 or something like that.
yeah, it's been a while, but
Scarlett
he's
Johansson,
and
is that the
Scarlett
girl in there?
Johansson,
Yes.
exactly.
Okay.
Um, and he's in there, and he's he plays like this really snarky like old guy. He's in the
Yeah,
elevator
yeah,
anyway.
I
So
remember that now.
that's him. But so he was a art teacher
Oh, cool.
growing up, and he kind of did that art teaching thing, and he just he's like, okay, I did that, and then he got into acting in a relatively later year, and then made a killing out of it. Now he's doing that, so it's just kind of like, yeah, you never know what is gonna hit, So
That's
it's not easy. Yeah, acting is not an easy thing. I think if you're gonna go into it thinking you're gonna make a bunch of money, that's not the reason why you should be doing it.
mm,
So because you
that's
will not.
that's a fun, that's I've never heard anybody say that about acting specifically. Um,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
that's
you'd be surprised. Like some
yeah,
people,
yeah,
they're like, oh yeah, I can. I'm like,
just
yeah,
gonna make it
if you
right to the
could.
top of the A list right
Exactly.
away.
I mean, it can happen. It can happen,
Sure,
but
sure.
if you don't have the skills to really back that up, you're not gonna have what they call legs in the industry.
Or
You
you got to
just
be grounded as a person. Like some of the bigger
yes.
names that you've met and worked with, how many would you what percentage would you say are actually grounded people and some of them who
Uh,
are putting it on
so
for?
I don't want to give out names, but
No, you don't have to
I'll
say any
just
names,
yeah,
but work in
I'll
proportions if
just
you will.
say yeah. If you so from my experience, if you are an A-lister, right?
Mhm.
And granted, this is like A-lister from you know 2000s to maybe 20, like mid 20, 20 teens, like
Sure.
2015 and stuff like that. Those actors are the most grounded.
Interesting.
They're the most gracious. They're the most.
Would you say
They're just
like
nice.
the the the
The
I'm trying
people
to
who if you say their name, you're gonna be like, oh, I know who that is,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
The B listers, the C listers, and down, those are the ones who just, to be blunt, they're the assholes. Like they're the
Mhm.
ones who are
Mhm.
like, don't you know who I am? Or they won't talk to you, or they're just, they kind of do their own thing. And it kind of makes sense, right? Because if you're not at the top of the list already, you already have you kind of have a chip on your shoulder. You kind of want to
You're
be
trying to
there.
get
So
to that top.
yeah, so you want to show your importance, right? You want to
Mhm.
kind of, but if you're already at the top and people already know who you are, then you don't have to do that. You don't got to show off. You can just it's very and like I like to think of it as very martial arts in a way
Mhm.
where like if you know martial arts, you don't have to show off
You
that
don't
you
have
know
to show
martial
off
arts.
martial arts. That's right.
No, because it's like you're not the guy who's going to be going into a guy or girl who are going into a situation and being like, all right, let's throw down. You're gonna try to de-escalate. You're gonna be like, look, you don't want to do
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
because one of us is most likely going to get hurt. It's probably going to be, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to jail. I got, so to me, it's that same mentality when you don't have anything to prove, you're going to be nice, right?
Mhm.
Um, and that's just how it's been across the board. I actually have one story, because it's a
Hey
good
man,
story. It's like this.
we've got time if you've got time.
Sure, yeah. So, um, my first experience on set, this was, I would say 2001, 2002, was on The Last Samurai. I was just a background, kind of getting into acting, but it was a really, really big set, and I got spoiled on that set because it had a big bunch. You could tell
Was
a
that in
production that was
Japan?
good.
Did you guys film in Japan?
No, no, it was out in the Warner Brothers,
Okay, okay.
local Warner Brothers lot, but they did a great job. Like
The
the
movie's
scene,
beautiful.
yeah, if you watch the beginning, you can actually see me. If you watch the beginning of the movie where Tom Cruise is being brought into, I want to say it's like Kyoto or Yokohama or some
Where
sort of
he
harbor,
first
and he
gets
goes
brought
into,
into the Emperor's.
yeah, and
Yeah,
he's in a rickshaw with this the
yeah,
other
yeah,
British
yeah.
guy. If you watch that scene, if you look to the left, I think you could see me. I was like, oh,
Oh,
that's
okay.
cool. But that whole street, that whole thing, they did such a good job. Like if you walked up to the stalls, the food that was in there was actual food. Like it was produce, there was fish. It was like everything was real.
Oh wow.
I was blown away. And like I was saying, you could tell the production has a lot of money because they had really good food. If their food's really good, they have a lot of money. But this is me being on the movie set for the first time. I'm like living it up. It's the first time I met Hiroyuki Sanada.
Oh cool.
He didn't speak much English at the time, and um,
Does he speak a whole lot of English now?
Yeah, he does.
Does
He's
he?
actually really
Okay.
good at English now. Yeah.
Cool.
It's
That's
still,
actually
it's
really
still,
good. Like it's only like 20 years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah. I mean, he spoke English back then, but I don't think he was as polished as he is now.
Okay.
But
Okay.
there's a deleted scene where I was actually on set when he did it, where he's walking down the street and these two Japanese guys, he's in like full samurai gear, and these two Japanese guys in kind of European style clothing come up and start mocking him.
I know the scene
Um,
because I have the DVD. I've seen this
Yes,
scene.
it's that scene, right? And he
Yep.
just kind of cuts his head off.
Yep.
Well, he did that on, and we're all watching it. The dude took one take. So literally,
He
what
did
they
the sword
was
work on that?
Oh yeah.
Oh
that's
my
him.
gosh.
Yes. So he comes up, right, and then they do the scene, and then he pull out his sword, and then they'll say cut, and he stops, and then they bring in a head on a stick,
And he's
and
actually
there's like
supposed to
this.
lop it.
Oh yeah, and there's like this, maybe I would say, I don't know, maybe like a 2-inch piece of tape
Oh
where the
my
neck is,
gosh. Oh.
and the guy is literally just like crouching down, holding the stick, and then they go, okay, go, and he just takes it one hit, cuts it
Oh
clean
my
off, head goes
gosh.
rolling on the ground. I was like, wow. So later on, because no one really knows who he is. I don't really know who he is, but I remember seeing him on the Japanese stuff. I kind of go up to him and I was like, so that was really good. I was kind of fumbling. He goes, "Hi," and walks away. I was like, okay, whatever. But that's not the story. Like so.
That is the
So on
most
set,
sensei response you could have gotten.
yeah, he was just like, I don't know who the heck you are. Leave me
Oh
alone.
my gosh. That's like a real life
But
Master Splinter, man.
yeah, I was, when you're on set, you could kind of like wander around if they're not really shootings, and then they have something called craft services, which is basically just food
Right.
for anybody, and it's really just for the actors and union actors, but I didn't know that at the time. Go over there. I was just like, I'm just gonna go get food. I was like, oh, there's food here, great. Walking over there, and I remember I had a bagel, and I was trying to cut it in half, and it's one of those knives that don't have any teeth.
Yeah.
Those plastics, right? And I'm like, this is not working. I'm trying to cut it, and then from behind me, I hear someone say, well, it's like, hey, I'm only gonna eat half of mine. Do you want your other half? And and I'm like giving a face. I'm like, I don't want your pay. I don't know who you is. I turn around, and it's Tom Cruise.
Oh,
And I was like, yes,
sure. I'll take half of your bagel.
I'll take, yeah. So they take, then we're sitting there, and he's like, we're eating, and he's just like, oh, you local, you trying to get into acting, and of course I'm just like, I'm fucking talking to Tom Cruise again. Like, um, and he's sitting in front of me, facing away from the set, and then from behind him I see this PA. Kind of an angry looking PA. He's kind of like running toward me. He's like, "What
As
are
they
you doing?"
as they tend to look.
Yeah, he's like, you shouldn't be here. You can't be here. You got to be on set. And I was like, oh. And then Tom Cruise just kind of turns around. He's like, hey, he's having his bagel. You're like, do you need him now? And he's like, oh no, why don't you just enjoy your bagel?
Oh
And
man,
just come back when you're.
that is
Runs off,
good.
and he goes, yeah, you're okay. Because if they need you, they probably need me, and they don't need me yet. So I was like, okay. So we're eating, and then he just walks off. I don't think he's ever going to remember. Because apparently Tom Cruise is a really nice guy. And I mean,
Well, that
he is.
seems
I mean,
like
from
he's
my
a pretty
experience,
nice
yeah,
guy,
he's
to be
really,
honest.
really nice guy, and he's a really hard worker too. So
So
that's why he works so much.
you might know better than me, but I heard that he actually did a lot of the at least the training
The fighting?
required.
Oh no, yeah, he definitely did. Yeah.
That's impressive
He
too,
definitely
because
did.
he
Yeah,
moves great in that movie. If that's the
Yeah,
case,
he's. I would say. I mean, this is my only opinion, but besides like Keanu, I think he's one of the hardest working physical actors out there. Where like that you could see He does all his
Well,
stunts.
he's in
you know,
his 60s too by now, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
And he's still doing
just,
Mission Impossible
he's
stunts.
still doing it. Yeah, he loves that stuff. So, yeah, no, he did a great job.
That's cool, man. That's a crazy story. You've already hit us with a few zinger stories. That one was wild. Tom Cruise defending your bagel. Wow.
Yeah, right. I was like, sometimes I kind of forget about things. It's like, oh yeah, but I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that story. So
yeah, The Last Samurai gave me this bagel, man.
Exactly. Right? And then I'm like, I'm just sitting there kind of like eating this thing, and I'm like, I didn't know anybody at the time, so I couldn't share the story with anybody. I met like a couple people like later on, and I was just like, but it's, like that story kind of got outshined because the next day, Tom Cruise runs over my foot with a horse.
Oh my gosh!
It was an accident. Yeah, it was a complete accident.
Did he crush anything or?
No, because the ground was super muddy.
Yeah.
And my foot just sunk right into the ground. And I was like, okay, but like we were wearing geta, which is like those big wooden things. So like it was just like, and he kind of like turns. He's like, are you okay? And he just kind of keeps going. So I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. People help me pull it out and things like that. But like, yeah, my foot was fine. It wasn't that bad. So
he didn't come up to you with another half of a bagel.
No, I don't even think like I didn't I didn't want to make a big.
Sorry about your foot.
Like, yeah, he's like, hey, sorry, man.
I'll put cream cheese on this one for you.
Yeah, I think he might do that a lot. Like,
yeah,
it's like, so I don't think that was like a special thing. I think he just, he.
Well,
he's
to your
really
point,
cool, so.
If you're at the top, you don't need to prove to anybody.
Exactly.
You have a moment where you can show that you're a little bit grounded, which I didn't actually think I was going to hear a Tom Cruise story like that tonight. So, hey.
Oh, cool.
How about that?
Yeah, no, he's a nice guy, man. He's a nice guy. That's one of the rare, like, times where you actually get to kind of sit down and like kind of talk. Be like, oh yeah, they're just people, just doing the job. So
that's pretty cool. I don't make this about me, but you say that, and I was on in high school. TRL used to do this high school week thing, if you remember that. And my high school was on there, so I was on there with my with a singing group from our school, and we performed with Ludacris. And
dope, nice.
That was the same thing though. They were like, okay, so they brought us into this room, and it's like a whole bunch of food and drinks, but like we're not allowed to touch them, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, so I think his last name is Mr. Bridges would like to come in and meet you. We're like, who's that? That's like not a teacher at our school. Who's that? Here comes Ludacris, and he's just like talking to us, like, hey, what's your names? All these, what do you guys like to sing? And the song that we were doing, that song he does with Usher, and it's like, you guys heard this song, and like. It was just one of those moments, like I'm standing 4 feet away from this guy who I've only seen, in music videos and stuff on my TV, and he's not any different. So now I'm here talking to you, Miyagi-san, right? And you're not really any different than anybody else we ever talked to, except that you're super chill, right? So so Alan, I know you're sitting there. I know you're listening. I'm curious what you're curious about right now, because whenever you ask a question, it always ends up sending us somewhere cool.
Sure. So the thing that off the top of my head is basically preparation.
Yeah.
Like whenever you're getting into character, whenever you're going into it, like, do you have like a preparation ritual? Do you do
like a process?
A process that you go to, or is it just like, hey, here's the thing, go.
A kata, if you will?
Yeah. So are you talking about when it's actually like we're gonna film, or like the audition process?
Well,
or
you know
both?
what? Take us through both. Like, if you're going for an audition, right? You don't know. You said earlier that you don't know, like, sometimes even what the project is.
Yeah, like you don't know how to prepare per se, maybe.
Exactly.
So you do like a cold audition, right?
Yes.
Sometimes. but if they call you back, or you kind of have a better understanding of what the project is. But
Hmm.
then like you also have directed and done some producing of your own. So
Hmm.
guide us through both scenarios, like
Sure, sure,
going in
sure.
as an actor and then going in as a creator.
Sure. So for an audition, yeah, they're all really connected, really, from the audition all the way to set. Because when you get the audition piece, for me anyway, like you have to really break down what the audition is. Auditioning is a completely different skill than acting. It's its own beast. You could be a really good actor, and you could be a horrible auditioner, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yes.
so, going through this, they usually send you something called the sides, and the sides are just like um, a portion of the script of a scene that you're doing. And you always want to ask yourself, why did they pick these? Why did they pick this couple lines or this scene?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that they're looking for? So that should, for me, that's like the number one thing. Is like, why is this one, right? I was taught by a very lovely casting director named Orly Sidowitz. I really owe a lot to Orly. She's actually the one who cast me for Blue Eyed Samurai. But taking an auditioning class, workshop, and whatever you want to call it, or even like an acting class from a casting director, is such a useful thing. It's just it gives you a perspective that you're like, oh, okay. And not only, you're learning how to act, but you're learning how to audition uh, to get the role.
I've never heard
So
anybody say this before. I, I,
yeah.
I, I used to do like a lot of stage stuff, so I'm
Hmm.
friends with some people who act, so to speak.
Yeah.
But like nobody's ever said that. Like the people have said like, "Oh, take an acting or take some improv," but nobody's ever said like with a casting director, and that's a really good reason too.
Yeah. I mean, all that works, right? Like you have to learn how to crawl before you
Sure,
walk
sure.
and you run, right? So, improv, I took improv, acting. You need to be able to, again, going back to martial arts, you have to learn your footwork first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before you can really
Mm-hmm.
do anything
Mm-hmm.
else. You gotta learn how to, throw a punch, throw a kick,
Proper horse
block.
stance, whatever.
Exactly. Horse stance. You got to know your the very basic cutouts first before you can even like do
Sure.
anything. So that's kind of it, right? But going in and taking a auditioning class um with a casting director, that's like if you already have all that stuff, right? You've learned all your heian, shodan, all that stuff like that, and
Got it.
now you're kind of putting it into practice now.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it might be like comparing to like kumite or something like that, where it's like, okay, in this situation, what kata can I use to like
Right.
deflect or something, right? And that's kind of where the improvising kind of comes into.
Mm-hmm.
But that specifically, what I learned from that is like really studying, the sides, like what page is this? Is it in the middle? Is it in the beginning? Is it at the
Mm-hmm.
end? Right? Because that kind of dictates like what the energy should be like. Is this a comedy? Is it a drama? Is it a little bit of both? I actually have a kind of a funny short story for that. Speaking of orally, so I had a manager. Her name is Patty Vitorito. Vitorito. Unfortunately, but God bless her, she passed away too. But
Mm.
Patty, I love Patty, but she did not give the best information when you would get auditions. And she sent me this audition, and the code word was Garfield Academy. And I was like, what? I was like, what is this, Patty? She's like, oh, it's a Garfield movie. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm like reading
Okay.
it, and it was really freaking dark. Like it was like it talked about a guy in a leather apron coming out covered in blood, and I was like, Patty, are you sure this is Garfield? She's like, yeah, it's Garfield. And I was like, okay, so I mean, a
Ah.
Garfield movie it has to be comedy, right? So I'm doing this, and I'm like, man, this is not working. Because again, that's the character I'm playing is not this guy in the apron. Like I'm interacting with him, so I'm like, maybe it is like a dark comedy. I don't know. So and then ironically enough, I'm taking this workshop with Orally, and and at the end of the class, if we have stuff we want to work on, she'll let us know. It's like, hey, do you mind if I kind of get your take on this, Orly? And she goes, sure. And then, I'm doing it. And she goes, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, that's sorry to curse, but that's exactly what she said. I was like, I don't know. She's like, what is this? And she takes my sides and she's like, who gave this to you? It's like, Patty did. She goes, okay. She goes, she told me this was a Garfield movie. And she goes, this don't seem like no Garfield movie. I was like, that's what I told her. She goes, right, let me figure this out. Let me find out what this is. So she goes on her BlackBerry, and BlackBerry at the time was,
oh my gosh,
makes a couple calls, right? Yeah. This is how long ago it was. And she goes, come here. And I was like, she goes, you can't tell this to anybody, but I find out what this is. And I was like, what? She's like, this is the Wolverine movie.
Oh,
I was like,
the second one?
Oh, no, this was the one that he goes to Japan.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, the Wolverine.
Yeah, the Wolverine.
Yes.
So yeah, that one. So I was like, oh, so she's like, yeah, don't do what you're doing because you're gonna get laughed out of the room. And I was like, yeah, good to know. So I was like, okay, cool. So that just knowing that, right? Like you have to be really careful about like all that stuff, and it's like, okay, that's good to know because then that totally informs me and how to approach this character. To kind of finish off that story, it was kind of interesting because like now knowing that it went in, and I was like really close to getting a very substantial role. It was so the callback that I got to go back to Yale was a different scene, but you could. Now that I knew it was a movie, you could totally tell that the character I was interacting with was going to be Logan.
Okay.
And it was a much longer scene. It was like 5 pages long, and I was like, okay, and did it. Casting director loved it. And it was like, cool. Then the Fukushima earthquake happens, so that whole movie is postponed. So I'm like, okay, but my agent. Patty's like, no, you're still in the, you're still favorite, you're still good, you're good. Casting group's like, no, you're still good. Then they lose the director, and they're like, okay, and they're like, that's okay, they're gonna get, you're still.
That
good,
would certainly
good.
explain some things about the movie.
Exactly. And then they lost Hugh Jackman because Hugh Jackman was doing now Les Mis.
Oh,
and then, like the correspondence from the casting director kind of goes away, right? We're like, okay, we don't hear back from him, and then like, long story short. They got rid of that entire script. That character doesn't exist anymore. Then they rewrote it again. And what you saw in the theaters is what actually. So it was going to be a lot more,
a good
lot
movie.
Different. And it was gonna be kind of like not like a buddy flick, but like it was honestly kind of very similar from the scene that I read to Wolverine and Deadpool a little bit.
Yeah.
Where my character was kind of like a Deadpool, but he was like a liaison to like the underground, but he was very swarmy, very like sarcastic, all that stuff like that.
Like the fool to Wolverine straight man almost.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
okay.
I was like, this is a dope scene, but
yeah.
Anyway, so that didn't happen, but like
that sounds incredible though. Like as a huge Wolverine fan, that would have been a really cool movie.
Yeah, it was really cool because like it was like he was navigating the underground, but not kind of fish out of the water thing, and then
like Madripoor. Oh my god,
I think it was Japan.
Okay,
it was like
okay.
It was I was speaking Japanese and things like that, and I think one of the lines was like, "Can you please just don't be Canadian here?" Something like that. So I was like, okay, I clearly know this is a Logan movie. He's up to these Canadians.
Very cool.
Yeah, so like that kind of stuff like really kind of leads into the next part with like if you did a great job in your callback, that's pretty much it. Like for the actor, because like my story right now, there's so many things out of your hand that will affect if you book it or not. Is like if you try to make sense of it, you're gonna go crazy. Like an earthquake happened, and the nuclear disaster happened in Japan, so they obviously can't be filming there anymore. All this crazy stuff.
Or COVID, to your point about Blue-Eyed Samurai starting production
COVID
for that
too.
in 2018.
Exactly. There was another show, like I always get these weird things. There was another show, an Apple show, where I was booked. I was like, great, and I was like going to be a series regular. I don't even know what show it was, but it was the code name was like Raygun, but I think it was like War of the Worlds or something like
It
that.
wasn't a
And I
breakdancing movie set in
no,
Australia.
it was like no, yeah, I know, right? That would have been great. Um, but yeah, it was like this kind of comedy drama type thing. And again, those are kind of hard to get a beat on too because you can't really tell. But yeah, COVID happened and then they just canceled the show. So I was like, okay, great. But you know that once you do that, you pretty much have and you get booked, you pretty much have a good at least bearing on how this character works. And then from there it changes, right? And you get on set, you talk to the director or whatever. Um, because the piece that I did for Cobra Kai, it was completely different than what I actually ended up doing for the show. So then when you get a new script and you're like looking, you're like, oh, this is like completely different. But at the very least, you understand kind of the spirit of the character. So you're like you can go into the
Mm-hmm.
set
Mm-hmm.
knowing at least have ideas. Um, and then that becomes another part where it really depends on who the director is or who the writer is. Some of them like you to have ideas or something about what's going on. Sometimes they just need you to do this one thing and you're done, right?
Right.
Um, so that's really kind of the process. And when you get onto set, for me, is really just trying to stay calm, because I don't care who you are. If you care about something, you're gonna get nervous, right? And
Yeah.
the thing is, that's also where the martial arts kind of helps in, where doing some breathing techniques or even doing some kata and stuff like that will help kind of just calm the nerves, because like the
Uh-huh.
nerves can really get into your body, especially if you're doing a fighting scene. You don't want to be all like shaky or like unsure of yourself. You want to be like, okay, I'm going to go into this.
Well, even like
But
pro fighters will do mitt work in the back for a
yeah,
couple sessions before
exactly.
they fight.
Exactly. So that's basically what I would do. I've never wanted really like kind of like went in and be like, let's just do it. Like it would um prior to, I mean, there are some actors that can do that, and more power to them. I mean, if it's a set where you can improvise and you can kind of do that, then sure. But I take the depending on how many days I have up until I shoot, I take all that time to just prepare,
Hmm.
and making sure that I know my lines. I know if it's a pretty intensive scene that I know the motivation for the character, even though I know it sounds very cliche, but like just knowing what at least I want as a character in this scene, right? So that's being translated out, and then just making crossing your T's, dotting your I's, making sure that everything is
Yeah.
prepared. And then to me, that's just being professional on set. Making sure that you're making everyone else's job easy. Because if you're constantly forgetting your lines, or if you do choreography and you're messing up your choreo, then everyone else's time is being wasted and it's money, right?
Or hurting people.
Or hurt exactly, right? You hurt you hurt the lead star of the
Hmm.
shore.
That could
So
delay things.
exactly. So that really is the process. It's just preparation. You go in, you prepare, you prepare, you prepare. And whatever that is, if you're, for this Cobra Kai one, it was like, icing myself up before every um, rehearsal, and then icing and going out and buying ace bandages and things like that
Yep.
afterwards,
Yep.
kind of like making sure that I'm good for the shoot day, at the same time, taking care of yourself, resting before that, before the shoot day, I really didn't do anything. I just sort of chilled, because I was like, I don't want to be stressed out. I don't want to be, worried about anything. Plus, I gotta let my body heal. But prior to that, I was in the hotel room going over the choreo, looking at the video like I took, you know, you know, shadow boxing, doing all
Right.
that stuff,
Right. Right.
recording myself, do it alone, looking at it and be like, okay, that looks good. Oh, the kick's a little bit low. Okay, can bring that up.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so for that's really you could kind of take that and put that into different every situation. Going into the production side, that's literally all you do is prepare. you need to prepare for everything, because like even if you prepare, something will go wrong. Like something always goes wrong, you know. So being a director and a producer, it's really, you can mitigate a lot of that by pre-production, you know, as much as you can, trying to make sure that you have everything covered, because ultimately there will be something you didn't even think of and you're like, oh my God, we didn't even do that, right? So then you have to improvise and kind of, you know, wing it from there. But you know, especially if you are a lead, as like, you know, you are the lead of production, the director, or even if you're like number one on the call sheet, meaning you're the, you know, you're the person who's like starring in the show. I'm in the belief that you have to show um, professionalism and be a good representation of what the, you know, production is. You know, be a good example, because then everyone's really kind of looking at you. So I've been on sets where the number one wasn't the greatest, you know, and it kind of
Hmm.
showed, because the production was kind of like, okay, that's, it could be a little bit better, right? Um, or a lot better. But I've been on a lot of sets too where the number one was great, you know, and production, even though there were some issues with um that always comes up, it's never to the point where you're like, oh my God, I wish I wasn't here, you know, like there's
Oh,
always
okay.
something that can, right? So yeah, if anything, that's my um I guess like routine when it comes to that, you know, preparing for the
Hmm.
audition, making sure that at least you don't have to be off book for an audition, but at least you know who the character is in your head, you
That
know.
sounds like martial
That,
arts, like
yes,
preparing all the time, because it
yes,
just by the nature of martial arts, the whole idea of training it is so that you'll never have to use it for real.
exactly,
But like,
exactly, yeah,
yeah, it's kind of like you're always constantly training this auditioning thing and you're always doing it for real, but you
yes,
could always do it better.
yes. I mean, there's so much, you know, synergy that comes from martial arts and even
Hmm.
acting, where we say, you know, you learn all this stuff and then you throw it away,
Yeah.
you know, and then you just kind of, you
Unlearn
know
it.
that when you're, yeah, you know that it's in you, so you don't actually have to like, you know, think about it. It
Yeah.
will just,
Yeah.
it will just be there, you know. That's to me really separates really good actors and performers from people who are still trying to get it right. I don't
Hmm.
ever say that they're bad, because to me there's really no bad acting. It's just like, you know, either you were prepared or you didn't prepare, or you
Uh
just
huh.
didn't care. But it means that there's always room for growth, right?
Hmm.
Mhm.
So
That's
yeah, so that's how I go about it, you know, kind of
that's
make
great.
sure that I can try to, you know, cover everything, because I know there's going to be something that comes up and like, oh, you know, I didn't even think about that, but at least
Well,
I have
let me
my
ask you real
foundation so
quick.
I can keep going.
Uh,
Hmm.
do you have some more time, or I know we're
Yeah. I got like maybe, yeah, like maybe like till like 10:30, I'll be good. So
okay. All right. Well, you
yeah,
give us a hard out whenever you need a hard out. We're not offended
sounds good. Yeah.
easily around here. But Alan, it sounded like you were ready to dive in a little bit more.
Oh, I was gonna say pretty much learn your craft, do the work. Experience is the best experience.
Hmm.
That's
That's what
everything
I'm
I heard
gathering.
there.
Yeah.
And very, very much like martial arts, it's the moment you are set there, you are stress tested, and it just seems like that it's kind of the parallels are right there. So
Yes.
in doing that and saying that in production, for us at least, it's like putting on a tournament or putting on an event and stuff like that.
Hmm.
That's it's all there.
Right.
Hmm.
So all of this is beautiful. It's about the artistry and everything like that. Is there anything that you can think of off the top of your head, that any projects that you would like to be part of, as far as like just certain intellectual properties,
Oh yeah. Oh
that's there. I mean, I know there's a ton of them, but it's
yeah.
like the first ones that come to mind.
That's a great question. Well, obviously the first one, I would love to do a freaking Miyagi show.
Yeah.
That to
Hey,
me right now is at the
we're
forefront
we're
of,
gonna manifest it right here.
Well, you've got the
yeah, I mean,
personality to run a show, man.
that
You got the personality to
that
to
I
be
mean,
the
yeah,
star.
it's thank you. I mean, like, it's just, going into this profession, you're always, especially as an Asian American, Japanese American, you always get this, I don't want to say stigma, but you always get this like thing of like, well, you should have a backup. You should have a backup. And it's like, well, okay, I get it. There's not that many
Oh,
roles and like that, but the people who've done it, they're like, it's like, yeah, you have to keep going, right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, we're at a time in mainstream where ethnic stories are like the big thing, right? We got
Yeah.
Shogun, we got Inside Chinatown, we just had Brother Son, Beef. We have all these great shows. And it's, I've been talking to a lot of like JAs, Japanese Americans. It's like, we have all these stories about camp, 442nd, all stuff like that, but it's really very insular,
Mm-hmm.
They're independent stuff, they're short films and things
Hmm.
like that, but there's really nothing mainstream about it. We had a couple in the 80s and 90s, like I said. I think the latest one that was mainstream was something called The Terror, season
Mm-hmm.
two, and it dealt with internment camp, but they had like a supernatural twist to it, which is cool and all, but you know, it's like we really do need a story that focuses on like a Japanese American history and experience, and I think the Miyagi story would be perfect. I cannot think. I know it would be perfect. Just
That's a real good vessel for that story.
yes, and it's
Yeah.
it's you have the fan base who not only are they interested in Karate Kid and Cobra Kai, but the fact that this character represents so many Japanese Americans, right? We have him;
Yeah.
he's part of the 442nd. He was in
Mm-hmm.
Manzanar,
Mm-hmm.
he does martial arts, right? Even though he is sort of like that, uh, trope of like the wise Asian, man, Pat Morita did such a good job to really, humanize him, really
Mm-hmm.
round him out, make him
But
three-dimensional.
you can turn a
So
trope
to,
into a positive
oh yeah, I
if
mean,
you do
tropes
it
are
honestly, right? Like they come from
exactly,
an honest place originally.
exactly, yeah, tropes are not bad. Like I
Sure,
think a lot
sure.
of times people think, oh, trope, but I mean, trope is there because it's popular.
Yeah.
It's right.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if it becomes tropey, then it's
Right.
different, right?
Right, right, right.
But like, Pat, didn't want to do that, right? He could have just played it straight as like this wise, faux mystic Asian guy. But he didn't. He really pushed to have. If you guys didn't know, like he really pushed to have the scene in the Karate Kid 1 about the 442nd where he's drunk and he's, you know, um, mourning his wife and his son, his dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he really had to fight for that because they're like, no, we don't need this. This is not that movie. He goes, no, but we do.
Yeah.
So having a Miyagi story that delves deeper into that, and then really, opening up that story for the mainstream because people are really interested about that part of him. They're like, hey,
Yeah.
I looked up the 442nd. You guys, and like, reading Reddits and comments, and they're like, people are like, did you guys know about this group? This is crazy. There should be a movie about that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, there should be a movie about it, but there hasn't been because there's really isn't any interest from Hollywood to create something like that.
Hmm.
But if this Miyagi series does well, to me, it's like this could be a really good bridge for that. It could be like, hey, look, a lot of people are really interested in this story of Miyagi, but they really love this, his involvement with the Four for a second, or the part about him being in camp is really interesting, or even like what happened after the war. A
Yeah.
lot of people don't even talk about the soldiers coming back after the war, or
Sure.
the people, families coming back after camp, and then all the racism and prejudice that they fought against, and then they still persevered to be able to, make a
Mm.
living or even become very prosperous. Like all that is untold. And
Yeah.
that's partly because a lot of Japanese and Japanese Americans they don't like talking about that. It's
Yeah.
sometimes if you're first generation, it's considered bragging. It's considered rude. Other times
Right.
it's like, look, we don't want to bring up all that hardship and stuff because it's in the past. There's a Japanese saying called gaman or shogunai. Gaman just means persevere, and shogunai means it is what it is,
Hmm.
right? And it's very, it's one of the things that connects Japanese and Japanese American together, where they both have that. So that's great and all, but what happens is all the stories get lost, and
Wow.
now a lot of the people who went through that experience are all passing away. So
Yeah.
to have a mainstream story with an iconic character with a fan base that already is there, to me it's a no-brainer but they have to do it well,
Yeah,
right? they
sure.
can't they can't just do something just to do it, like
Just to do it.
exactly, like
Just fan
Miyagi's
servicey.
exactly, Miyagi's backstory is so complex, even to the point where it's being a little convoluted, because they gave him basically everything a Japanese American could be, right? He's a 442nd. He was in camp. He does martial arts, But the thing is, the one thing that they have to do right is, if you're going to tell stories about the 442nd, you have to make sure that you're not involving this fictitious character in real
Mm-hmm.
battles,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because everybody in that battle. So, for example, the battle on Banzai Hill, the I Squad, I Company, I should say. The ones who went up Banzai Hill to free the Lost Battalion. You can't put Miyagi in there because that's gonna disrespect all those guys who were
The
there and the
real
ones who
history.
passed.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? But you have to craft it in a way that he's still important,
Adjacent
but
to that
still
real event.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
Another
Yeah.
thing is, like, Miyagi is first generation. So he can't be in the 442nd because the 442nd was comprised of all second generation Nisei,
Mm.
So you have to kind of craft the story of like why he's in there, which is fine. I mean, it could happen. Um, but that's the thing. You can't just be like, oh, he was, he's from Okinawa and then he got sent to Manzanar and then he, went into 442nd. Like that's not how it would have went. If he was Issei, they probably would have sent him to Tule Lake, or they would have deported him, or he might have went back. And if he was, in the military, he probably was part of MIS, which is a military intelligence service, because he could speak
100. Yeah.
Japanese, and he would
Huh.
be on the Pacific front, not so much the European front. So you would have to craft a story where he gets around all that,
Sounds like you're crafting it right now on air.
I mean, yeah. So that's the thing. I mean, this is part of that preparation, right? Like you kind of have to
Yeah,
think about all this stuff
you know this
to be like,
character, even if
oh
you're
yeah,
making half of it up. Like you
yeah,
know this
yeah,
guy,
yeah. I mean, you kind of have to, you're
man.
going into playing him, right? Because even though he's not a real character, I mean, not a real person, he's a real, iconic character.
Yeah, the
So
character's
you
real
have to
for sure.
exactly, you have to play him as though, I approach playing Miyagi as though I'm doing like an autobiography. Just going back and looking at all the films, obviously, but at the same time, in looking back and seeing old, interviews with Pat and like his thought process of like how he created Mr. Miyagi, or like what he was going through in his life about Mr. Miyagi. And then also from there, you know, I had the privilege of being able to talk to people who were in camp, doing plays and stories that revolve around camp.
Wow.
Because personally, I'm a second generation. I'm a Nisei, or Shin Nisei, which is a new Nisei. My parents came after the war, so I don't have anybody in my blood family that went through camp. But I do have a lot of close relatives, a lot of close friends, whose families did go through that. And that's the kind of stuff that's important. Because if you don't have, like, say this, I wasn't the actor who they picked for that. I would hope that if they did, that person was one Japanese American or at least
Sure.
Japanese, but preferably Japanese American because then you don't have to learn all that stuff. That's
Hmm.
it's ingrained in you already that when someone says, "Oh, my parents went to Gila River," or they went to Poston. Like you know exactly what that means. You're gonna be like, oh, okay, or my family was in Terminal Island, they got kicked out. Like that, it's just like something where like, oh, you don't have to learn that. I know what that means.
Okay.
And that's the thing where this Miyagi show movie, whatever it ends up being, would be great, because it's like this generation who's really hungry for that, and they don't even have to be Japanese American for it. Because a more majority of the people who I'm seeing the comments from, they're not. But
Yeah.
it's like, how come we've never heard about this before? How come no one's talked about this before? And it's like, yeah, because we haven't. There really hasn't been a lot of coverage on that, and I'm hoping that this is going to be the start of it. Like this will be this one thing, and then the rest would be like, hey, a lot of like Japanese American stories would be great. Like David Ono, who is a newscaster for, I want to say Channel 4. Sorry, David, if you're gonna read. Anyway, so he does a show called Defining Courage, and it's this he narrates kind of like a documentary on stage. And what he does is he goes out and he interviews people from France during World War II, Italy, and the people who these 442 soldiers changed their lives. They might have saved somebody that ended up being like a descendant of someone who lives there, or he reaches out to the families of the soldiers and then tells them, hey, did you know that your grandfather has like a plaque in this small France villa because he did this? And they're like, I didn't know that.
Hmm.
So he's doing his part and you know kind of spreading that word. So I can, it would be a perfect storm of stuff if this really kind of coalesces into something where you have all these stories manifesting, and then we're able to really tell these, or get to the point where the people who are still alive have the chance to kind of tell it themselves, because
Yeah.
everybody really wants to know about it. So that's one of the projects. I would love to be in a Star Wars film too. I'm a big Star Wars fan, just like it's like you guys are the
We didn't
but
even
Star Wars
talk
right
about
now.
Star Wars at all yet, but
Yeah, I mean, Star Wars would
I
be great. Um,
we should have you on again and do a whole episode on
oh
Star
yeah,
Wars.
definitely.
Maybe
I
watch
mean,
some
I'm
maybe watch some lightsaber fights with you and get your thoughts as a
cool.
guy who's done this before.
Sure. I mean, I'm very opinionated when it comes to Star Wars. Just want to
Good.
warn you guys.
We
So
we
like,
like opinions.
yeah, I
They're
would
just like
actually.
assholes, my dad would say. Everybody's got them
Yeah,
and they all
they're
stink.
exactly. Yeah. Um, but speaking of that, I would love to work with Sam Witwer.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah, the guy who does Darth
actually,
Maul's voice, Star
yeah,
Killer. Yep.
I actually have worked with him because we were on Crank together. Right?
Oh,
Oh wait,
really?
Yeah, yeah. Watch Crank.
I
So
didn't
I
even
met.
know like I
Yeah. So
didn't think he was
Sam.
that much older than me. Like I'm not
No.
super old, but I thought he was just a couple years older than me.
Yeah. No. He was on Crank. He just played like a goon. I remember because we got picked up and we're in the car with this band going to set, and we just kind of sitting across from each other. And he goes, "So you're the motherfuckers who are going to be shooting us today, huh?" And I'm like, "I guess so." And he goes, "All right." He said, "You ain't gonna get me." And I was like, "Well, just because you said that, I'm gonna aim for you." And of course, we're not actually shooting at each other. And then riding up the elevator, she's gonna be like, "You ain't gonna get me." I'm like, "Yes, I am." I don't know who this guy is, right? And he's just like, "Hey, my name is Sam." Like, and how they shot it was like, they have one side, and they're shooting through a plexiglass with blanks, and then the other side. But I looked at where he is on, like when I was watching, like, oh, he's over there. So I positioned myself right in front of him as though I was shooting him. So when it looks like you see the actual film, it's I'm in the part where they have the big gunfight on the roof of a
Mm-hmm.
standard.
Yep. Oh, did I lose you guys? Hello? You guys hear me? Oh no, I lost you.
Hands, and it's me with the gun, and
Oh,
then all of a
there
sudden
you.
all hell breaks loose, and Sam is there. So I would love to work with that guy again. Even though like he probably doesn't remember me, but he's a big nerd too, so like it would just be
Yes.
kind of cool
Well,
to work on that.
the way
So
you talk about Miyagi is like the way Alan and I might talk about freaking Anakin Skywalker, right? Or
hmm.
the way that Kay and I might talk about the lightsaber battles in the first 3 movies.
Yes.
You
Uh-huh.
know, the way that you're talking, that to me is like, as a fan, I'm not even a Karate Kid fan. I'll just be real with you, but like as a martial artist, I appreciate the Miyagi character. So like I'm
Yes.
sitting here listening to you talk about this character with such like reverence. I'm like, well, this is your guy. This is who you like, and I know the people who need to hear it probably aren't hearing it, but you guys need to hear it and make this man Miyagi. The another thing I was thinking of when you were talking about the Miyagi story, especially the cultural thing, because I come from an Italian American family. I'm second generation, and it's super important where I come from, whether you're Italian, Jewish, Romanian, whatever you are, that you're like privy to your background. And now I live in Bumble, Ohio, where nobody knows what they are. Oh no! And so I, for me, hearing you talk about that cultural part, that's like the story I want to watch. And I was just thinking, like, man, you'd make a great Hamato Yoshi. Like in a Last Ronin story or something like that,
Yeah.
like a flashback Hamato Yoshi, like you would do that character, or even like a young Shredder, man. That would be a cool
That
tale
would be cool.
in a video
Shredder
game
would
or a TV show series, that kind of thing.
that would be great. Yeah, I mean, all the greats played Shredder, right? So,
That's
uh,
true, man.
so
That's true.
no,
Mako
that
played
would be
Shredder.
awesome. Yeah. So, no, that would be awesome. I mean, again, I'm up to playing any like Japanese
Yeah.
American icon, man. That would be right up my alley. It would be so cool.
So, Alan, we should probably wrap it up with a couple of the usual questions and let this man get on with his life. What do you think?
Sure. All right. 2 questions that nobody ever leaves the show
Without answering.
First off, favorite Star Wars character. Second off, lightsaber color. Go.
And then we have a third question, which I'll ask you at the very end. It's very short.
Lightsaber fight? Are you talking about?
It's favorite lightsaber color.
Color? Oh,
Yeah.
God.
What color would your lightsaber be?
So favorite character. Honestly, yeah, I gotta say Anakin. Anakin is like my favorite one because it's just the arc, and he's such a great archetype to just like look at for any
Yeah.
story. Like the whole redemption, and not so much Vader, but like Anakin, right? The Anakin that is still in there with Vader.
There's dimensions.
Yeah, he's such a great character to look at. Lightsaber color, I would say. I'm gonna say indigo.
Okay. Okay. Nice.
Little bit blue, little bit red. I actually when Saber Forge was still very fledgling, and they had an Indiegogo campaign, and you can kind of like play. I think it was like $300, and you can just custom make your lightsaber. I made a lightsaber with a indigo blade, and it was like the one of the rare colors. I was like, okay, let's do that one. And I was like, yeah, this is dope. I like that,
Right on.
I'm blown away that Saber Forge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have like
Dropping bombs on us here, Kay.
three Saber Forges.
Oh my gosh. We
have
need
two
to
that are
have you in an event when you're around.
Yeah, I have 2 show ones, and I got one that's a stunt one. Because I with Steve, we did a May the 4th like Star Wars event thing that we came out of me. It's like, oh, I need a stunt one, so kind of did that one. So
Yeah.
I have a couple.
That makes sense now.
Mhm.
The Steve connection. So
Oh, man. How about that?
Yeah. Well, Brian,
Mhm.
the other question that Mark needs to ask is, what's your
Sure.
favorite pizza topping?
That's it. That's the question.
Pizza topping. My go-to is pepperoni and jalapeno.
What did you say?
Oh,
What was the
nice.
first one? Pepperoni and jalapeno?
Pepperoni and jalapeno. Yeah, that's what I
Interesting.
go to.
I got to ask you a more important question. Do you eat
Sure.
anchovies on your pizza once in a while?
You know what? I honestly, I'm one of those people who I don't hate on pizza toppings, man. Like
So
if it's
I'm like
the
you,
only
man.
thing that I'm like is with like white sauce on
Yeah,
pizza. I
yeah.
mean that's fine, but like to me it's like a tomato base. But anything else that goes on that, it's fine. I mean I'm Asian, man. I love fish, so
Yeah, this has been so much fun. I thank you from the bottom of our toes for
yeah.
coming
Thank
on,
you
man.
for having me.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah, and
hey,
you know,
if you're-
I don't like to presume anything, but if you ever want to come back, you have an open chair.
Please, yeah, just let me know. We'll set up a time. I'd love to
Sure.
talk
So much
Star Wars
fun.
with you guys.
And
You
if we
know
have
what?
an event going on and you happen to be around, we will definitely shoot you a line.
Please, yeah, and if I can make it, I'll definitely love to join you guys.
So, man, we'd
so
love to have you.
I'll say it now because it's in the future.
Well, yeah, and we got to do a plug anyway. So here you
Memorial
go.
Day. Yeah, Memorial Day weekend, we're doing something called Saber Mayhem in LA.
Cool.
So if you're free Memorial Day weekend, we do have
It'd be right
good
at
event
the
schedule.
Hilton.
Nice.
Is it the Hilton or LAX Hilton? Right.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, like I'll let Kay know, and then yeah, hopefully I can make it up, guys. So.
Well, it's always good to have a friend of Steve's on the show, of course.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
thank you for coming on. We appreciate everything about you. Go ahead and tell anybody who wants to find some more about you where the best places to do that would be.
Great. So you can reach out to me. Can you still hear me? I mean, one of my earphones went.
Yeah,
dead,
yeah.
but-
You're
Okay.
loud and clear.
You can look at my Instagram. Is probably the best way to look. It's the_Brian_Takahashi.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to look at some of the the web series stuff, there's not much on that, but it's 38 degrees production. You just put that, or you can just type Brian Takahashi in YouTube, and this should pop up too.
And I'm gonna try and make sure I get all these links in the show description as well.
Great, awesome.
And then your Instagram, awesome. So you guys heard it here. Young Miyagi-san, Brian Takahashi, we love it. Thank you so much. The stories were just gold.
Thank you.
and the insight really was more than we even bargained for. So we appreciate that. And we appreciate you guys listening. If you've made it through this many episodes of our show, you're a champ. If this is your first episode, welcome, and you really came in for a good one. So check us out at sabermartialarts.life. We are also on Instagram at SMA Foundation. We're now on Patreon, patreon.com/sabermartialarts. And we've got lots of events coming up in 2025. You heard about Saber Mayhem. We got some more coming at you that we will talk about in future episodes. And please go patronize the man's Instagram here at the Brian Takahashi. And please, next time we see you guys, bring your own saber.
This party's
Thank you
over.
very much.